There's never an ideal time to sustain any type of injury, but in the case of Jung Lee and potentially Jerar Encarnacion, this is a time of year that's especially frustrating. With Lee in particular, we've talked about him a little bit. I've written about him a little bit over the last couple days. He underwent the MRI a couple days ago. It showed no structural damage, but he didn't play in today's game. He's not going to play in tomorrow's game. He is planning to play in Sunday's game against the Sacramento River Cats and could potentially play in the two exhibitions against the Detroit Tigers on Monday and Tuesday. Manager Bob Melvin has said that he wants Jung Lee to play in at least 3 games before going to Cincinnati, just to ensure that Lee is ready for the start of the season. If Lee plays on Sunday, that would leave him with 3 games exactly, and there is a potential possibility that Lee does play back to back to back. Now, it might not be him playing in center field, it might be him being at DH. That is a possibility, but at this point in time, it's a little too early to tell. It's something that we're just going to have to wait and see on. Lee himself does believe that it will be realistic that he'll be ready for opening day, but he did take a more broad, general look at things and said that it would be nice to play opening day. He obviously does want to play on opening day, but in the grand scheme of the season, it's 1 of 162, and he wants to ensure that he's healthy for a full 162, especially after playing only 37 games last year due to the season-ending left shoulder injury. Now, if Lee's unable to go on opening day, or if he's not at least able to play on the field, the likeliest candidate to be in center field is Luis Matos. Matos, of course, has the edge right now over Grant McCray for that 4th outfield spot. And Lee, even if he doesn't start the season on the injured list and is just unable to go, it makes the most sense for Matos to be the one to play over in center field. Yastrzemski's pretty firmly in right field, and Elliot Ramos is pretty firmly over in left field. As far as resuming baseball activities, Lee is likely to do that tomorrow. Maybe some throwing, maybe some swinging. Obviously, he's not going to go full tilt, but we'll get a clearer sense of where Lee is tomorrow. Tomorrow, of course, also being the final Cactus League game that the Giants play. So the Lee injury was one thing. That was something that we already knew heading into today, but the Jerar Encarnacion injury is a new development on its own. Jerar was playing over in right field, took a little bit of an awkward route, and kind of landed on his left hand a little bit awkwardly, kind of jammed that left ring finger. And he's currently undergoing, well, maybe not currently, but he's undergoing an MRI for that left ring finger. We don't have a timetable of where things could be, but again, it's another injury that the Giants are going to have to deal with as we're approaching opening day, which of course is less than a week away. We don't have a ton of information. We are just currently in the wait and see process. If Encarnacion is unable to play or be ready for opening day, he likely wouldn't be in the starting lineup regardless, but if he does have to go on the injured list in some capacity, there's not a clear replacement for him for his specific bat first role in the same way that there is for Lee. I think one of the likeliest options would be David Villar, who's currently out of minor league options, and that would provide Villar with the opportunity to stay in the organization. But it's very, again, at this moment, it's very unclear as to where that goes. I wrote about him earlier in this spring if you want to dive deeper into Encarnacion and why he's a very appealing as a bat, someone that could see a lot of time at the designated hitter spot, especially with some of his batted ball metrics. As far as the other moves that the Giants had prior to the game, Tristan Beck and Wade Meckler were optioned, while Jake Lamb, Logan Porter, and Enny Romero were reassigned to minor league camp. With Romero being reassigned in particular, that means that Joey Lucchesi is the only non-roster left-handed pitcher remaining in big league camp. Does that bode well for him making the team as a second lefty? Well, he's still here, obviously, but when Melvin was asked earlier today if they have any clearer indication of whether they'll carry a second lefty, he just said no. As far as the game itself, Logan Webb had his final tune-up start of Cactus League play before getting the nod on opening day on March 27th. It wasn't his best game as far as balls and strikes go. I can't remember what the exact breakdown was, but it was definitely not where you want it to be as far as ball to strike ratio, but he still ended up tossing 5 2/3 innings, allowed 1 earned run, 1 walk, and had 7 strikeouts. He finishes Cactus League play with a 1.77 ERA. That is a bit of a turnaround compared to the 10.97 ERA that he had last spring. But aside from the results itself for Webb, this spring was an opportunity to work on things, to kind of tinker, to experiment with a couple different facets of his game. We've talked about some of the movement that he's added with the back foot. He's talked about throwing his cutter a lot more. He's talked about changing the shape on that changeup. And these are things that we're going to have to wait and see how they play out over the course of the regular season. Working on these things takes a lot more precedent over the results themselves, but given how he's performed last spring, as well as how he's performed just generally over the course of his spring training career, he'll gladly take the sub 2 ERA.